This is your wake-up call.
This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
We're here today because the Globe and Mail reported that CSIS had uncovered an influence operation targeting Prime Minister Trudeau through donations to the Trudeau Foundation. How many donations did you sign donation agreements for at the Trudeau Foundation? How many times have you done
Apart
that?
from the times I've donated myself, only the single time that was mentioned.
Only one. So in 18 years, just the one time.
Correct. 20 years, yeah.
That's exceptional, you'd say.
The circumstances were such that I needed to sign.
Okay. So they were such that you needed to sign, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. Were you involved in the negotiations for other donations?
Let me think. Not really. A little bit for the John McBain donation.
Okay.
But not in any formal way. Negotiations for donations are usually, sometimes they're started by governance members, but usually they're taken on by the leader, the president of the foundation.
Okay. So we know that Beijing had consular officials that were part of the deal from the beginning, to the extent where they were in meetings with the foundation to arrange this funding. That's
my understanding
that's
I wasn't at any meeting. Maybe there was on the signing ceremony. One of the issues that you have to understand is that the donors, so Mr. Zhang Bin and Mr. Niu Gensheng, don't speak a word of English.
Okay.
So at a lot of times where you're thinking that they're using consular officials as basically free translation services, free and appropriate translation, as opposed to getting someone who's not trained in the kind of diplomatic translation. These men took their donations seriously.
So is it more than just the signing ceremony? Because we have access to information documents that demonstrate that there were consular officials in the meeting with Mr. Rosenberg and several other people, including the executive director, Ms. Comtois, and that the action out from that meeting was that your approval, Mr. Trudeau, was required, and
you understand why?
I understand why.
I was giving the approval for the Université de Montréal to use the name of my father, so acting as a family member, to say that the Université de Montréal could be using the name of Pierre Trudeau to launch a scholarship program.
The desire for Beijing to get access and influence with the leader of a G7 country is it's well documented. We know that foreign influence operations are perpetrated on many, if not every, country. But in this case, we saw that the donation by way of these cutouts, people acting on behalf, as the wiretap information demonstrated that they were going to be refunded by.
Have you heard the wiretap evidence?
By the CCP. It was reported in the Globe and Mail, sir.
And reports on
Chair?
single sources. Sorry,
just on a point of order, if I can.
Okay. My apologies. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I haven't interrupted Mr. Trudeau, and I would just ask for the same.
Yeah, Mr. Trudeau.
I understand.
Mr. Barrett is asking questions at a time that he requires the response. Please respond appropriately. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett. I did stop your time. You have 2 minutes left.
The desire for them to run an influence operation was evidenced in that reporting in the Globe and Mail. And within 5 months of this donation being signed, both the gentlemen were given direct access to the Prime Minister. That's quite a deal for $140,000, I'd say, that they were both able to access the Prime Minister. And the situation around it, where we have consular officials from the People's Republic of China directing how the donation is to flow. We have the involvement for the first and only time in 18 years on the foundation of the Prime Minister's brother. We have the Prime Minister's brother, you, sir, signing that donation agreement, and it culminating with those cash for access events with Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister. That raises incredibly concerning questions for Canadians. You said you had to sign at the start of my questions. You said that you had to sign. Why did you have to sign?
Because it was a three-way agreement between the foundation, four in many ways, the foundation, myself representing the Trudeau family, l'Université de Montréal, and the donors. So I guess I could have, the main reason I signed is because Morris asked me to. I also had signing authority at the time. So I was regularly signing checks at the foundation. So, but I imagine I could have given a procuration to Morris to sign for the family, but it was his suggestion that for the views of the ceremony and honoring these men who I, by the way, still have no reason to believe their motives were not honorable.
Is that time? Okay.
And so that's why I signed. It was in that capacity as a family member, giving the permission to use the name.
I'll say that in a previous meeting, I attempted to maybe not have you involved here, but you volunteered to come before the committee. You're here before us today, and hopefully you're able to shed some light. In a Le Devoir article in regards to the climate within the foundation, you stated that there was a management crisis, which you attributed to errors of judgment and serious misconduct. In your opening remarks, you also stated that you were part of a committee that hires a president. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And so you would have been...
all four.
You would have been involved in hiring Ms. Fortier.
Yes.
Right?
Fournier.
Fournier, sorry. And she was also a former fellow. Is that correct?
Former scholar, first round.
How long of a relationship would you have had?
I've known her for 20 years.
What went wrong?
I can speculate on it. I guess the climate at the foundation had grown more difficult in the fact, she has some very good skill sets, and she managed, from the point of view of the board, she managed our programming quite well. And it's a complicated, but the staff environment of the board was realizing that there was more and more, and such as me, I'm a member, so I have some custodial, but I'm not directly. I was hearing about it, that there was an enormous amount of turnover in the staff.
There was also allegations that there was a hostile climate at the board level, intimidation, bullying, conflicts, internal...
At the board? No, never. There was a very tense few weeks at the end where there was a fight over management trying to set up an investigation itself and making false representations to the board.
And are you aware that she has offered to provide some documents that may offer conflicting accounts to what you're presenting here today?
I'm all for all the documents to come forward. I think the documents, if the chair of the board comes forward, I would like to submit the resume from the directors of
in her testimony,
what happened.
Ms. Fournier stated that she did not use any money associated with the donation because it had nothing to do with her mandate and wasn't a part of the previous mandate either. Given that you were involved in the conversations and negotiations with donors who established the conditions that the money must be used to organize lectures regarding China, why did you agree to these conditions for the donation despite the fact that they did not align with the mandate?
I signed the contract, but I did not negotiate the agreement.
But you were involved in the negotiations.
When I was contracted by Jean-François Gaudreau-Desbiens, we were in interim period. Our president had left, and we were in a...
You were involved in the negotiations?
I was not involved in the negotiations, no.
According to a Le Devoir article in 2019, the University of Montreal Dean of the Faculty of Law, France Houle, wrote the Trudeau Foundation, referring to a discussion that her predecessor, who you've referenced, Gaudreau-Desbiens, with Mr. Trudeau about the donation, stating that you, Alexander Trudeau, mentioned to him that your foundation wanted to give the Faculty of Law of the University of Montreal the $200,000 donation. Do you recall that?
I met with Gaudreau-Desbiens. I even met with the donor in June 2nd. But at that time, my communications to them all the time were interim. In June, when I finally met with the rector of the university and the donor, I told them all the same thing, that we'd just chosen our new president, and it is his mandate to manage and negotiate donations.
In retrospect, you wish you had just given it to the university?
Mr. Green?
Well,
Sorry, sir. That's
So, Mr. Trudeau, you said that your involvement came in December of 2013. That's 8 months after your brother became leader of the Liberal Party.
Sorry, I missed your question. Sorry, what was it?
That I was recounting that you had said that you first became involved with this through the university in December of 2013.
Correct, yeah.
Right. It was right after 8 months after your brother became leader of the Liberal Party. Then in September of 2014, regime officials participate in a meeting with the foundation to negotiate this donation. Then in September of 2015, weeks before the federal election, there's a massive push, a rush, less than a day to complete the signing of this donation, but it didn't come to pass. So in May of 2016, 2 weeks before the donation contract is signed, Chinese Cultural Industry Association representatives meet with the Prime Minister in the residence of Benson Wong, who's the chairman of the board of directors of the Chinese Chamber of Commerce of Canada. Then the donation is finalized in June, and in July of that year, the CCIA confirms that the payment of the first installment of $70,000 is made. And then in October, Justin Trudeau meets with Mr. Geng Sheng. So within this process has gone on for years, but there seems to only be any urgency for it around political events involving the now Prime Minister of a G7 country. And there's direct involvement by officials from the dictatorship in China. When did you first meet Bin Zhang?
I met him in June 2nd, 2014. And you realize the money was never spent, eh? There was no... The donations came through in two, and then third part was basically refused, and we never launched the program or spent the money.
Thank you. When did you first meet New Gensheng?
I met him only at the signing ceremony at the Université de Montréal.
So that was in 2016?
That was, I believe so, yeah.
When you met with Mr. Zhang, what were the discussions? Did they include any? Was it specifically about the mandate of the foundation? Were political affairs discussed? Kind of
he wanted
culture in Canada.
When I met in June, I seem to remember he really wanted to do. He said he was really excited about. Again, the consular officials were translators. I don't remember if they were anyone there was very junior, but he was excited about what he'd done at U of T. He was excited about doing something similar at Université de Montréal. He kind of understand, and I think Monsieur Lefebvre reported at one point how he's a little bit irked that the Trudeau family was suddenly involved in the Trudeau Foundation. He wanted just to apply the same model he'd applied at U of T at Université de Montréal. And so he was friendly, but not overly so. And I told him what I was telling Mr. Green. We had to wait for the new president to come in to start negotiations.
Did this donation and its connection to the CCP ever raise any red flags for you?
The connection to the CCP. So this donation came from a private company in good standing in Canada. This is a company that whose bank account is in the Bank of Montreal, governed by very strict rules and money laundering and all the rest.
So no.
So the relations to the Chinese cultural, I checked it as soon as I sort of knew that he was in what is this Chinese Cultural Industry Association, and it's I wouldn't call it the British Council or the Goethe Institute, but these are governmental.
I have to take my time back. I've got 30 seconds left. The CCIA is established as being a soft power arm of the Communist Party of China. That's an established fact. When did you become aware that Canada's intelligence services were investigating this as an influence operation? And when you found out, who did you talk to about it?
I only read it like others in the Globe and Mail, and I questioned the veracity of it right away. I don't think this is accurate information.
In our last committee meeting, an article from La Presse was referenced and stated that in 2016, a board member made a senior staff member aware that the real donor wasn't the same donor as the tax receipt. That's an allegation that was made. In her testimony, Pascal Fournier stated that the board member in question was Farah Mohammed. In 2016, were you made aware that the real donor was allegedly not the donor listed in the tax receipt?
That's absolutely false. That there was any. That's one of my points. That there was any confusion around these donors. It was always this company with multiple addresses, which allowed our ex-president to make some confusion around it, and these two individuals. There was no confusion about that then, and there ever has been.
Okay, that concludes the time, and the only reason why I allowed it to go a little bit further is because you mentioned Hamilton, Mr. Green, so...
Do you recognize that the Trudeau family, because of its ties to China, the admiration that your brother Justin has for the dictatorship, as he mentioned, and your collaboration with China, would it not be a great target for China because of your brother being a political party leader at the time and who is now a prime minister? Do you believe that the Trudeau family has become a great target? I can't speak for my brother, but for the foundation, and I never thought that there was any interference. But with all the knowledge that you have and everything that you've written, you've never thought that Canada could become a target? Yes, theoretically, but at all the steps of the foundation while I was there, no. And I refused the idea that those people were trying to interfere. Because if so, then why didn't they keep ties with me? So the only donations that you participated in is the donation that comes from China. That's the only contract that you signed. It's a contract with a Chinese company. It was the only signing ceremony that you participated in for a donation. As I stated many times, it's the only donation that had 3 or 4 parties. So if there had been other donations where the Trudeau family needed to sign their name, and so you didn't see there the will of those people to have a Trudeau family representative? No. They were actually quite disinterested with the Trudeau family during the first meeting. He knew Trudeau Sr., but did not want to work with the Trudeau Foundation. But from December 2017, a letter sent to Mr. Rosenberg by Mr. Lefebvre, Alexander said that Mr. Binzang could help us create an even bigger program to allow universities to receive donations from China in memory of Pierre-Elliott Trudeau. At that time, I was not hiding that it was important that Canadian universities participate in academic diplomacy. We all want China to move towards a rules-based state like democracy. Inaudible. In your book, you defended the Chinese Communist Party. No. We need to recognize certain accomplishments of that regime, and we need to compare China to China, not China to France or to Canada. China, after Mao, the first years of the revolution were horrible. But with Deng Xiaoping, we saw a time that's over with Xi Jinping. But China now is trying to interfere and to extend its tentacles everywhere. You're a specialist, Mr. Trudeau. Yes, and I would have been the first to see if there had been attempts at interference, and there weren't any. So you think that CSIS is completely wrong? I don't know. But I think that what the Globe and Mail is sharing is wrong. And yet, the same source made it so that the Prime Minister organized a meeting with a Conservative MP to inform him of intimidation tactics by a Chinese diplomat. So it's probably the same source that shared this data with regards to the Trudeau Foundation. We can't pick and choose information. I don't know, Mr. Berthold.